Hey guys, so in this video I'll be explaining you all the some of the design principles which I use day to day to design like usually do the sketches and designs. So I'll be showing you these. First is like 70-30, and I'm pretty sure you've heard of this like from somewhere, like if you studied concept art or maybe like even design a little bit. You must have heard of this, I guess. So yeah, what this means is like whenever you design something, right? Like let's say I want to make like a panel line, let's say a wall, a sci-fi wall. Okay, so let's just make this longer. Yeah, so just imagine like this is going to be like a side panel of a wall, like a corridor. If this is like a sci-fi corridor, let's say. So these things are here, these. So yeah, let me just explain you what I mean. So you see, this angle is actually dividing this whole plane into 50-50. Like let's say this is 100, right? So this is almost half, and this is almost half of this, right? So let's not do this. So according to this, like what looks pleasing to human eye is something like this 70-30, because for us it's very natural and it makes things look more pleasing. I don't know why it makes things look why it makes it look so pleasing, but it does. I think it's just we're used to seeing things like this way, very similar to hierarchy. Like when you see outside your window, not all of the buildings are the same height, right? Like not all of them are 50-50. There are some smaller ones, there are some bigger ones, then there are some middle ones. And same with the trees, there are some like variations of trees. Some are really big, some are small. So let's do the same with design. uh, so one thing which we can do to make this better is divide this in 70-30. And how to do that? We can just move this thing a bit down below. So what we can do is I'll just delete a little bit. Yeah. So as you see, this is already a bit 70-30, right? This is let's say 70%, so this is 30%. Now let's say you want to add something else to this panels, right? Like maybe like opening door handle or something like that. So now see this design as like a completely different eye. So if this is 100% and now I want to add a cut line, so let's just add something here. So I want to add this inset over here. Yeah. So as you see, like I divided the shape into two, which is like this 70% of the shape and then the rest 30%. So it already looks a bit better, right? Like it's more natural for us. And as usual you can add, now you can subdivide this shape into 70-30. So that's another amazing thing. So instead of 70-30, what I'll do is I'll just make a part for the handle. Let's say this is like the handle of the door, something like that. Yeah. So you see this is already like taking a little bit of shape now. And then you can divide the shape again from here, whatever you want. Like you can just continue to add some creativity of your own. Yeah, something like this. And then you can just add. you know, those random triangles. But these are like just example to show you what I mean by dividing the shapes. Yeah, but this doesn't really look good to be honest, so let's just remove it. Let's just add something really simple, not too complex. Yeah. So yeah, this is a really cool method to design because these principles usually work most of the time. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just learn the rules, get really good at it, and then at later on you can just break it to your own style or the way you want to break the rules. And yeah, so we just covered 70-30. Like just try to break the shape into, you know, 70-30. Like anything you design, right? Like even if it's a box, and if you want to make some cut lines or maybe some form change, just divide it into 70 and then 30. So this already makes things look a bit better in general. And yeah, what's the next? It's contrast. So let's now check contrast on the same drawing. So okay, so contrast, there are two ways. Like one is a color contrast and the second is the shape contrast. And let me explain you both. So by color contrast, what I mean is, let me just make a new layer so I can paint this. And let's put this bit white. So we got like a really light color for the main shell. And now to contrast this light versus dark, we can just add like a dark shade to the inner door, which we have divided into 70-30. So this is going to give us like really good contrast. So as you see, this is what I wanted to explain. And for like some extra tertiary colors, so you know we have like two colors right now, which is like light, dark, and this is already creating contrast. But you know if you add some tertiary colors, it's gonna make it look better. So this is something which I use a lot in my designs. Like I mostly use like three colors, two primary colors, like one is primary colors, then one is secondary, and the last one is, which I use very less, maybe for the accents, is the tertiary colors. So in this one, you know, the primary is white, then the secondary is the gray, and tertiary is this orange. So this is another thing which I wanted to explain is this, you know, first we got the 70-30, and then we got the contrast, which is light versus dark or dark versus light. One way to show contrast is this. Let me just, yeah, let's say you have a really dark scene, right? And to create a contrast, you can just add something with like a really light, looks like Batman. Yeah, but this is what I mean by contrast, because when you zoom out, this pops up. You can read this, right? Like it suddenly, like your eyes, you know, focus towards the main thing, the contrast area. And to create like say another contrast, which is like light versus dark, you can do the same with something white. But because it's not white right now, let me just, yeah, let's say I have something white, and you can create contrast by adding something dark. Yeah, so this is also a way to create contrast. This is dark versus light, this is light versus dark. So yeah, this is contrast. And what else do we have? Let me just, yeah, And then we have flow. Oh, okay, so in contrast, I forgot to tell you the shape contrast, right? Okay, so what shape contrast is, so in this design, we have everything a bit hard angle, right? Like 90-degree angles. Everything is 90-degree angles. So to make some shape contrast, what we can do is, let me just delete this design a bit. We can create a shape contrast over here by adding something which is not 90 degree, which is a curve or maybe a cylinder. So this creates another sort of contrast, which is shape contrast. And yeah, so let's just paint this. Yeah, so you can create like contrast with shapes as well as colors. So let's remove both. And also way I can show you contrast with the shape is the same thing. Let's say you have very angular design with 90-degree hard angles, and suddenly you can create contrast by putting something very organic or very curved. So this is a really nice way. Yeah, maybe another curved boolean over here, something like that. Yeah, there's so many different ways to create contrast. But yeah, mostly with colors and shape. So just, use your own creativity to make them really good. And now we have flow. So basically, as it sounds, flow is something which flows. Duh. Uh, let's do a flow-based designs, like anything which has a really good flow. And there is also one thing which I want to explain in flow. Let's say, you're trying to design something with a flow like this, right? So as you see, the lines are converging at this point, right? So whatever you're designing, try to make sure to put where the lines are going to converge, a lot of details there, like major details which are going to attract the eyes. Because let me just explain you how this works, because this is going to clear things a bit for you. So when you're painting as well, right? Like when you have, like let's say this is my horizon line, and let's say there is a character over here. That's an ugly character, but yeah. So if I want my viewer who's looking at my painting to look at this character, what can I do? I can add some leading lines, right? So maybe a street is going this way, like the whole street is like that. Then I can create some mountains which is directing your eye to the character, right? These are like all painting techniques. So maybe the mountains is something like here, and even like another mountain coming from here, something like that. Then another way you can attract people's eye is by creating contrast, which I just taught you in the second this line, right? Right. So this is already a light scene, right? So two ways to make contrast is either make your background dark and leave the character so it can pop up. So when you zoom out, it's gonna create contrast, right? Or you can just make your character dark and leave the background white. So this is gonna also gonna create contrast. So when you see this, this is going to be your main focal point, because I'm leading your eyes towards the character. This is leading you, this is leading you, this is leading you. Almost everything is like pushing you to look there, look here. And painters, they also use like, color hue to, attract your eye. Like sometimes painters are going to use very vibrant red. So when you zoom out, your eyes are going to naturally like, oh my God, this is so vibrant. Look here. So this is also a trick to do that. And these are the principles which works the same in design. So let's say I have designed something. Let's say I'm trying to design something like this. So you see the natural flow is something like this. So either the flow can go from this direction to this direction, or you can make the flow from this direction to this direction. So this depends on you, like what you're trying to make, what the design is. So let's make it from this direction to this direction. So let's just like add a symmetry so I can just make the flow more obvious. Yeah, so now you can clearly see the flow. Now, as I've said, when the things are flowing, put major details here. So, we can add all the detailed part over here, like whatever you want. Let's say I want to add a circle here. I'm just doing it like really quickly to explain you. And and then also make sure while you're introducing the flow, you can introduce contrast because we have to go back to the other principles, right? So I'm gonna like explain you all this principle into this single design which I'm drawing right now. So let's make everything a bit flowy. And by the way, one more thing I want to explain is framing. So I'll explain that a bit. Wait. Okay, so let me just explain you framing, then we'll get back to this. So, okay, so let me draw something. So let me just explain you what framing means in the simplest terms possible. So let's say you have this, image of yourself at home, or maybe your grandparents, or maybe like some family members, or something like that, and you have it on your wall. So it's hanging there, right? Let's just make another copy of it. But if we add a frame to this, what's gonna happen? Which looks better to you? Does this look better to you without any frame? This looks better, right? It naturally looks good. And what if we also add some value changes to the frames? Like maybe some lighter frame inside and then the darker goes outside. This also looks good. So what I wanted to say is whatever you design, right? Like try to frame it like a painting or something like that. Like okay, so let's start with a cylinder. I think I can explain you how to do what framing is. Yeah, let's say I want to divide this cylinder into two parts. So of course, again, 70-30. So I'll divide it a bit more top. So this is like more bigger area than small area. And if I leave it just like this, it's gonna look not so good. So what you can do is put some framing around and you can change the frame lines to whatever you want. If it's sci-fi, you can just make it sci-fi. Okay, so we can frame it like this, then maybe another framing here. Maybe some openings here. And then, as I've told you before, contrast. So let's say everything in this one is a bit dark. Yeah, let's say everything is dark. Now to create contrast, we can just pick a lighter value for this framing. So you see, it's gonna create contrast. So these are the things which I wanted to explain, but this is kind of horrible. I'll show you in a better way. Where's the lines? Yeah, so in this design, you see like these lines which I'm adding, right? These lines, I'm just trying to frame this thing, I'm trying to frame it. And then of course you can add some, details, or you can just add whatever you want here. Let's say the whole design is because this is the main focal point, so we can add more things. And actually I do a lot of layering sometimes. If you ever look at my stuff, I do a lot of layerings. I don't know, maybe this is like some sort of pipe, and this is main circle area. Then yeah, even this circular part, we can just frame it. You don't have to frame everything, but wherever you need. I don't want to frame anything else here. You can add like a smaller one inside, but just add it. This is horrible. Yeah, so this is what I mean. And when you color it, you can keep this either dark, this one either light, or maybe keep this light and this area dark. So again, contrast. And in the same design, I want to show you one more thing to make this design look better, which is repetition. I already taught framing, right? So repetition is the only one left. So there are really a lot of ways to do repetition, but basically repetition is something which is really common in nature. So it's very common, in everywhere. Like you see snakes, they have scales, right? And if you carefully look at their scales, they're all like the same pattern repeated like millions of times. So that's repetition. And even if you see like cockroaches legs, they are filled with like furs which are kind of similar to repetition. And a lot of things like even flower, the parts inside the flowers, they have repetition. And crocodile scales, they are repetition. The teeth, everything, like a repetition is like very natural thing, and human eye is like really good at picking repetition. So one more thing I want to explain about repetition is yeah, so this is repetition, right? So let's say this is in our design, and I'll tell you what I mean, if how to use this in a design. And so this is repetition, and one more thing I want to show you is emphasis. So let's say we have this pattern going on, but then again there's a straight line, and then the pattern goes on. So one thing is like your eye is really good at picking things which are not quite right. So if you look at this, you're like, yeah, looks okay. But if you ever look at this, you're gonna be like, your eyes is going like very well, and like, oh shit, what is this? This is not right. This shouldn't be here. So eye is actually really good to do that, because if I copy this like millions of times, right? If I copy this like a lot of times, and let's just delete these. Yeah. So if you see the whole thing, this stands out, right? Like, so this, imagine something like this in a design. Like your whole design echoes, but there's one part which stands out, which is like very different. So you can use this in your designs, but wait, let me just show you. So to add repetition, let's just add it here because we have a lot of space. So let's add something, a cylinder. This is quite common. So let's just add and then we'll copy paste it so I don't have to draw it. I got it here. Yeah, you see what I mean? So we got like almost all the rules over here. So we have this big area which is 70%, then little bit here which we also used as framing and 30%. Then we have contrast which will happen when I add color. Alright, let me just clean it up a bit. Yeah, then we have flow, then we have repetition, and we got framing. So these things are framing. And of course you can make it a bit better by adding details, stuff like that. I'm gonna insert this, maybe put some details. Again, I'm kind of using repetition over here, but this is not exactly that. This is like pattern is also a design principle, but more like these. Of course do the same. Just to make it quick, I'll copy paste this. Yeah, it's not perfect, but yeah, I just wanted to show you. And yeah, even while adding details, right? Like try to make sure not overdoing the details. What I mean by that is there's one more thing which I forgot to add is echoing. So you can echo the same details at different places and with different sizes. So let's say this main cockpit area, we can just use this as a detail. And what I mean by that is this, because this is big, right? Let's repeat the same thing but here. So we have the same thing. No, this thing is repeating. So it's kind of the same thing, but we echoed it to the other side. But this doesn't really look good, to be honest. This kind of looks horrible, so let's remove it. But what I mean by echo is the same design which you repeat in on different places in the same design. Like let's say I want to add, yeah, let's say this small little booleans. So what echoing would be like using this and then using it something like here and maybe here, but just make sure you're not overdoing it because when you overdo it, it's gonna look very ugly. So we just did it here, and one more cool thing is with echoing, you can just also play with the size, but because there's no space right now, it's gonna look horrible. So let's just remove it. Yeah, but this is what I wanted to show you. You see, I use it the zigzag pattern. So try to use the zigzag pattern because that naturally looks good. And yeah, I guess this is it. What else? We can just add some colors for contrast maybe. Let's do that. So I've already covered like how to paint these, like how to color these areas. So I guess you won't really have much issues with that. Just leave the white areas a bit to show highlights. Nothing really special. I want to remove the, and this is why I really like this coloring method because it's so efficient, right? I don't have to use lasso and fill everything. Sometimes lasso is annoying. Also, I can keep a little bit of contrast maybe inside. Let's keep it here. Then you can just, add darker of the darks. This is why I also really like round brush because I can just make something dark as well as light. You see, it's the same color. I didn't change the color, but I'm playing with the opacity. So you can just make things darker, lighter. Maybe you will keep this dark and maybe the top as well. Yeah, and we'll just duplicate the liner to make it a bit darker. Yeah, and this is what I wanted to show you in terms of design, like all the principles which I usually use most of the time. And of course, you can add like details a little bit, maybe smaller, maybe cut lines or something like that if you want to. If I had time, I would have detailed this much more. Maybe I would have, added more this or like framing here, black here in the middle area. Let's add that. So this also kind of divides the, oh, this now kind of looks like the model which I did for the art station challenge. But yeah, this is this is what I think this is the same thing which I used while doing that challenge. The same design principles, echoing and these form changes, the color variations, stuff like that. Contrast, flow, repetition, framing, echoing. Add some small cuts. I just realized we don't have this black line over here, but it's okay. But yeah, I hope this kind of cleared out in terms of design and what I use almost like daily when I'm sketching. So this is mostly for, the overall shape. So when you focus on flow, when you focus on sketching, focus on 70-30, while coloring, focus on contrast, and while doing shapes, focus on flow. But flow is something which is also, depends on the design, like what kind of design you're going for. Of course, if you're doing, like 1980s sci-fi, there's not going to be much flow in it. Like flow usually works for games like CIG, this Cloud Imperium games like, this Star Citizen and Especially this works for industrial designers and doing vehicles, product design, these things. And repetition is natural, don't worry about it, just use it when you see the opportunity where to use them. And framing is of course necessary, use them. Echoing is aesthetic choice, but of course use them for sci-fi stuff. And there is one more thing which I wanted to teach you guys, which is design as some eras. And like what I mean by that is you can make a design look futuristic or old by just changing few things. And what I mean by that, let's say we have this plane, let's just merge them. Okay, so let's say I want to make, a mech, like 90s mech. So this is like a panel of a mech, and I want to add bolts on these four corners. So let me explain you how you would do if you're doing like 90s mech. So as you know, like 90s mech had this, I guess this is called hexagon, right? Oh, I might be wrong, but yeah, these kind of bolts in old mech designs, and even like the older design in general. So yeah, you can, if you add them, it's gonna make it look very old. And also this is on top of the surface. Make sure like if this is the side view, you see these bolts are like popping out of the surface. So this is a very old technique. Like you would see these in even today's stuff, like generators or maybe machinery. Yeah, these exist, but if you want to make things futuristic, this is not gonna work. And of course you're gonna repeat it. So this is old. And now let's make something brand futuristic. So let me show you what I mean by futuristic. So in futuristic stuff, things don't pop out. If you're adding a bolt, it doesn't pop out. What it does is it goes inside, and it kind of automatically makes things futuristic. So let's make some. Wait, let me. Is it, yeah? Is it the same layer? No. So we're gonna make an inset. Like 3D, you can inset a face. So now it's giving us the illusion that it's inside. And of course you can add some, design on the bolt. And these designs are actually something you'll learn slowly if you, learn from other artists or maybe look at industrial design stuff. So you see, we naturally got something which looks very futuristic. Let me just merge them and future. Yeah, you see the difference? So it's not like, oh, this is shit and this is good, or maybe this is shit. It's more like a personal choice. When you're doing client work as well, the client will let you know, like, okay, you have to design, World War II sci-fi, or maybe you have to design very futuristic. So make sure what to do. And also, in futuristic stuff, you're gonna see a lot of, insets, stuff which goes inside, like cut lines. What I mean by that is cut lines, yeah, and cut lines which goes inside. So I'm adding this line thickness to show that this line is going inside, like deep. Oh, that's what she said. No, I don't want to make these jokes in Gumroad video, but yeah. So these type of cut lines are not really, like, they are in the older design too, but they are kind of ugly. They're more 90 degrees, kind of weird looking, janky looking. So I don't really like them. But yeah, you can change them according to your own style, It doesn't have to be like this. So yeah, this is also something I wanted to explain you guys, and I hope this video kind of helped you and summarize something for you, like what I mean, what I usually do when I'm designing, what I think, and how do I add details, and these principles. Of course, there are a few more principles, but these are the main ones which I use almost all of the time when I'm sketching out ideas. And yeah, I hope this video helps, and meet you in the next video. See ya.